Hi everyone. Uh, we're M4G Advocacy Media. You're watching the Journey Series podcast at season 4, and I am Mark, a brown man, bald, black glasses, wearing a brown shirt, and um yeah, and I have somewhat of a beard mustache.
And I'm Crystal. I hope you all had wonderful holidays and are staying warm. Today it is great. It's freezing. Um, we're in our home office. I'm wearing a pink sweater and I have brown hair, brown eyes, and bright glasses.
And today we're speaking with Mark Blake, who's joining us from the UK. Hi, Mark.
Okay.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Mark. I am along with my partner Alice Reeves. I am the co-founder and co-director of Joyfully Different, a business community and learning hub for neurodivergent business owners. I founded it last year, after about 5 iterations of a previous enterprise, roughly. Early, and it's been going very successful. We've got about 45 members or so. So rolled out a roster of in-person and online events focused on different hosting discussions on different topics of neurodiversity and its relation to entrepreneurship and business, personal development in relation to business and neurodiversity, social impact through our uh, work, practical business skills like networking in a neurodivergent way, workshops, fancy programs, and grams. I have been, and before this, I have had an extensive a record in the lobbying space, where where I championed policies to better support survivors of autistic survivors. Content warning for anyone of domestic abuse and sexual assault of all different ages, championed it within the police and a bit in the NHS, and I've carried on the NHS work independently late last year as well. As well, started that back up again. Again, I some people say I do too much, and some people might be right. 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 And just a side note, I am also a university student studying psychology at the University of Brighton. And in the midst of all of that, I still have to find time to have a social life, which is tricky. Okay, and I guess that is my introduction. I am wearing. If I didn't know we're doing image descriptions of ourselves, which is useful, which is a really good accessibility note. Kudos to those. I am wearing a black shirt, have a slight stubble. I am of Uzbek. Although I've been raised in the UK, I am of Uzbek descent, brown man as well, and I have black glasses. Yeah, black
Yeah,
glasses. Just checked for accuracy. And that is my full introduction.
Well, that's amazing, Mark. And I wondered if you could address something that we talked about during the pre-discussion. Um, you had mentioned that people who have gone through some trauma who go into certain traditional systems of treatment, which they end up getting re-traumatized by a system that's supposed to be there to help them. Can you talk about that?
Certainly, certainly. I think that's true. To expand on that, I think that's true in almost all areas of life. Of life in support systems that have support systems that purportedly support neurodivergent people and neurodivergent people with intersectionalities, of course, other disabilities and whatnot. Not that the list is big. Like in like something I've noticed in mental health, for example. Mental health, especially, well, I can speak for the UK, okay, is really heavily centered in really behavioralist approaches and from mental health support. Sorry, sorry. It's based in. It's really steeped in mental health in behavioralist approaches for ranging from the mild things like CBT and correcting of behaviors there. They're all the way to the more extreme, and from my perspective, definitely abusive applied behavioral analysis therapy. And the middle ground of positive behavioral support, which all on various degrees of intensity and also might be a bit of stupidity, focusing on essentially conditioning out behaviors rather than dealing with the root cause of the struggle that they're facing. For example, Paul, a common conception of neurodivergent people is that we struggle with socializing, and B, don't want to do that. While the second one might very well be true, because there are a lot of introverts. It's introvert and neurodivergence, as with any other groups. It's not true for all or even most, as the stereotype agrees as the stereotype views it, and what's viewed as difficulties of socializing is really a different socializing style. Different styles of communication, different emotional drivers, different social drivers. Different thinking styles, a lot of interconnected nuances that the current mental health system in the UK and some and I think across the world as well don't explore, and which lead and because that nuance isn't explored, it leads to the suppression, the constant suppression of natural responses to navigate ourselves through life and to deal with the difficulties, and such as when burnout occurs, instead of letting yourself feel it, alert and taking care of yourself. So with that constant suppression, we might force ourselves to continue on to operating, pushing us further down the mental health spiral that would be already on at that stage. That this also applies in the employment settings. Things traditional employment it's so really linear. You sit at your desk and if you're in an office job, sitting at your desk, for upteenth hour of the day, depending on the length of the shift, and losing your soul to a screen. At least that's how I view it.
No, I get it.
And I am of the type that likes my soul intact. Thank you very much. And also wants to move about. I'm really active. I really like walking. I also stim through movement, moving my legs up and down in a really weird stretch. That's the way I can describe it. I don't know if that's accurate, but I know I've done it in multiple meetings. Things that I can say for sure. Sure. And it also a lot of traditional working environments and education environments are also very linear, one step after another, again, continuously. And it doesn't factor in that a lot of neurodivergent aren't very linear at all. At all, they're more of like an ever-ranging mind map, or a spider's web where that keeps growing and interconnecting, and not factoring that in, factoring in the other nuances or of how our brain is wired, and the way that we're wired to work again leads to that suppression of natural responses. It will and very likely induce masking, which I found that I worked with recently in an event we did together. Said to me, it's kind of like the denial of yourself, which I wholeheartedly agree, leading to that feeling of internal devaluation, which can very easily spiral in into people pleasing, and other traumatic behaviors. If I list them all, that'd be too long for this episode. So, yeah. So, and lastly, it's in social life. There is a very Unfortunately, some stereotypes are very accurate, like British and politeness. That's speaking someone in England. That too accurate. And a lot of spaces that aren't neurodivergent led are very. Well, I can definitely speak for England for this. This are definitely very based on a lot of social rules, rules that sometimes are like playing 3D chess to ask someone to do the dishes, or 3D, or 3D chess to ask for an email. And those are real examples that I've seen happen in that kind of tactical approach to social rules, which. And we get told that we're the ones with social difficulties.
Right?
Just get to the point without 3D chess.
And then that all gets exhausting when you have to play that game.
Yes, play that game. Especially if you're asking. For me, I've over the course of me running my enterprise, and just over the just a lot, just for, in the last few years especially, did a lot of work to unmask and relearn learn a lot of better habits for myself. One of the many reasons that Joyfully Different exists, and we're specifically focusing on entrepreneurship, is because entrepreneurship, if done right and done with authenticity, can create an environment for you where you don't have to mask, where you can
Right.
say something stupid, when you can say something is stupid, or your breast stinks, and things, and people won't be offended, and both of those things I do all the time, and in a space where you can be honest enough and admit that you overslept, and that's why you're half an hour late to a meeting. That example was from today. Today when I met my friend Ben, and so I woke up at 7:30 in the morning today in UK time. I thought I wake up. I'll be responsible. Wake up early. Give myself extra time to get ready for meeting. If I need to snooze just for a little bit, I can. So I woke up 7:30. I snoozed my alarm for what I thought was half an hour. For what was half an hour, and 7:30 turned into 9 a.m. Yeah,
Oh,
because
no.
yeah, and and I woke up at 9 a.m. And my meeting with Ben was 9 a.m. So, uh, oh shit. Shit. So I grabbed my phone, grabbed my keys and laptop bag because I was working in the co-working space all day, and then just ran out my room. Uh, room and ordered an Uber to get me there, because if I didn't, I would have been even later than half an hour. And when I finally got there, I just thought, I run my own business. I run my own venture. If we're going to be collaborators, there's no point making up an excuse or playing that role. So I just said I overslept, and that's why I'm late, and it didn't do anything. And because of that authenticity and honesty, it didn't do. It took well, and and we had a very excellent discussion, that led to an excellent collaboration. I think, and it, if and that can come from and that kind of authenticity comes from um, compassionately trying to find out who you are. What I mentioned at the beginning, again, communications, how you think, how you feel, how you interpret the world, what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you're good at, what you're bad at, what your specific neurodiversity wires you towards. Uh, and and the current socializing style that's predominant and that doesn't allow that it turns people into mere statues with rod up their arse, so say, regurgitating the exact same thing, yuppie yuppie yuppie.
Right.
Today, and that's hopefully a long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's also very apparent with the other party that, like you explaining your example, waking up late and arriving at a later time. Well, I think it's very apparent when you're dealing with someone who really wants to listen and understand how you got where you are, and they're empathetic with the situation. But if they constantly go into blaming you and chastising you for doing it wrong, and not accepting the mistake that you made, that says a lot about them, and that's not the kind of people I want in my circle. So I'm just gonna immediately be like, okay, thank you. It was nice knowing you. You know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with my example, I guarantee almost everyone has done that at some point. Point. The only difference is I didn't try to lie my way out of it. I just told him what happened.
Right, right.
Um,
And
and
and to
yeah.
go back on, what as neurodivergent people,
Hmm.
we've all dealt with uh, the masking thing and doing things the way they wanted it done, and then blaming us for not doing it that the way they wanted us to conform, those kind of things. So, no, I think that right there, you were talking about starting your own stuff and being in your own space and making your own mistakes. And
Hmm.
I think that says a lot about the disability community when they recognize those things and they were not given a space in a lot of places and a lot of the jobs
Hmm.
to be themselves and have to mask. So it wasn't always our fault that we had to mask. It was, we talked last season about, the problematic situations that when we did share our disability, it took away certain accommodations and that were beneficial to us being successful in our what you wanted us to do. If we don't feel supported and feel like comfortable in that space, then yeah,
Hmm.
you're not going to see our best performance.
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's very challenging to build a successful business because the entire system is structured so that you have to conform to this to fit in, to make things work the way that it's been structured to work, instead of actually being authentic and genuine, and being supported by people, because they're all, everyone, whether we're neurodivergent, disabled, whatever it is, we're all pre we all grew up being sold on this system that wasn't actually made for us. It was made for the people with all the money and the people with all the power.
Hmm.
Yeah, you were when we talked before, you brought up a really good thing of your redemption. So can you talk to us about your past ventures and how what made you successful in this venture?
Sure, yeah. Yeah. My journey into joyful difference and my past career can be summarized as the comeback of the century in a way. Anyway, um, to start with, when I ran I for my the whole for my journey, there's required context and text. When I was younger, although through a lot at the a lack of knowledge around my specific neurodiversity city, and a lack of understanding of trauma, there was a lot of conflicts I faced as a child within school and some with that family, family, and the and that contributed to a whole whirlwind of masking and the trauma that accrued from it. And it's like it balanced up so high that when I got to university the first time around for my first degree, degree, it's like I was in my own space, meaning holes, and because I was away, all of that all of that suppressed trauma from masking came bursting out. Out, and it seemed like overnight my personality changed, changed because I started feeling. I felt all of it, and my decision making can change because it was steeped from that trauma that it suppressed and now started feelings all over and did not know what to do and when I first started my non-profit, it was for someone else, because at that point it was for a friend I used to have who got screwed over by the police when she was trying to file an assault case, and that was to do with redemption itself, because when that was to do with coming redemption is off in a way because because I'm not proud of this, but I'll share it because I believe in vulnerability and open vulnerability as well. I did and said some really toxic things that came from that suppressed trauma that burst out and made her experience a lot worse, and that created a sense of uncontrollable guilt and grief, because I had heard quite badly a friend that I used to love deeply, and my mental health recovery from that trauma, from that built-up masking trauma, started because as a way to make amends to her, for her, she told me to get help, which was both good and bad, bad, because I was getting help, but it wasn't for myself. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for someone else, which for the way I'm wired was destined to make the change not permanent. And as a result, I relapsed quite significantly many times as I was trying to fix myself. So, but and then when I went into starting that novel of spread from that guilt of having failed my friend, and I was quite ruthless would be the polite word for with how I handled my team. I did not show my team and my partners, especially my partners, to nurse. I was arrogant with how I handled that ruthless with how I did deals, and might argue with who I was dealing with might be necessary because it was politicians. It never is, because we can't change the world if we lose ourselves in the process, and we actually not change the world, just change things in general. If we lose ourselves in the process, and that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, because steeped from that trauma, I did whatever it took, and then my first enterprise imploded badly and through due to a lot of things. A lot of poor leadership that I did when I was handling my team and how I was organizing my community, and my own arrogance, and the fact that I didn't know this at the time. My work was feeding the trauma that had genesis it. That was the genesis of the work. and it was all so vast that I was doing so much work to unravel so many things. I had suppressed it and it. I didn't address it for at least until like last year. So that entirety of the year was as I was getting mentoring, which I'll get to, I was unraveling it, and trialing and learning before I properly before I count as my proper start when I teamed up with my partner. And I was and bored. After that, I didn't even give myself a time to have much of a break. And I went straight into being a board member of a non-profit based and non-executive director, which is like a volunteer advisor for a non-profit based in Wales. EOS that did what I did advocacy and policy for autistic people and autistic survivors. And then at that point, what made me burn out of that work completely instantly, it was when I mentioned this briefly in the pre-recording. When I think I mentioned this briefly in the pre-recording interview, that when I noticed that the majority of advocates around me, although quite understandably, were just fighting for access and survival to a rather joyless world, and I couldn't quite grapple with that, because I just frankly wanted more out of life, life for myself and for my friends, for everyone I love. But what I didn't know at the time is that realization sort of added another layer of what already was like a trauma sandwich, which that came from entrepreneurship. Like I was working on addressing other patterns and but that trauma sandwich from entrepreneurship got bigger. So I left that work behind, and while I was doing my second now psychology degree, I switched from software engineering to psychology, literally at the most inopportune time. Second year retake, just if you're curious, in a very bureaucratic way.
Right?
Yeah. And it was and I switched to I switched to psychology to better suit my neurodiversity and social network. And when and then after I've had an idea of what I wanted to do, helping to do. My first version of that of what I was doing was actually nothing like what I was doing now. And it was based on a tradition that friends used to have had a virtual games night, isn't it? And I thought from how fun and how safe that was, that maybe community was key. Okay, so I thought I would replicate that tradition in the enterprise, and then we were building that up, but I hadn't addressed this the entrepreneurship trauma sandwich. So when I started it back up again, it flopped itself in the window of my soul, in a sense. It says it's still here. Here you just buried it, and when it kept creeping up, instead of addressing it, I buried it even further, which led me. And the unfortunate and even more unfortunate thing was for my first enterprise, I teamed up with my best friends from school, uni, because I thought there would be that safety there, there to be vulnerable, which I was, but my pride, my trauma response is bigging myself up, and instead of taking that vulnerability that I had teamed up with them for, and admitting that I'm vulnerable, instead, instead I made myself seem as Mr. Big Man, good man, or like, well, actually no, this is better, Supreme Cheese Lord, and
Ego
uh,
gets in the way.
sorry.
That ego gets in the way.
Always, and I've learned that the hard way, and I'm never making that mistake again. Okay, confidence, yes, but that ego, no. No. And that built up, and that translated into me being a rather toxic leader, and next level toxic to every one of my team involved, including including one person, and to make including one person who's trying to so very hardest to hear what I needed, but in that trauma sandwich and arrogant cycle, uncle, I didn't reciprocate. I didn't utilize her efforts to reach me, urge me, and there were so many. Lasted like over 4 months consistently, and and to make all of that trauma soup. I'm using a new one now. Now worse. Um, I went to an Erasmus exchange in late 2022 to one of the few the UK was still a part of, because we made a stupid choice of leaving the EU, and I couldn't vote at the time, so I did the next best thing: humiliate the MP that was campaigning at the snap election. Action, top notch. I researched everything he was saying and bulldozed his answers with logic until he couldn't say anything more. Well, that was hilarious. Hilarious. But and he actually ended up being one of my chief collaborators now, which is even more hilarious. That it started from there and ended up as him being one of my biggest allies, and allies. And I in a conversation that made me see that people are gravitating to away from gravitating towards the usual the essential
Right.
essentially viewed as the norm. Norm. He said to me, as someone who is the very stereotypical hippie, he did like meditation, and half the time didn't wear a shirt, wear drums, drums, and it was fantastic. He was a fantastic guy. A guy said to me that life is energy and energy is focus. And that we gravitate towards the instant, what we view as instant gratification, and the norm because it's stable and it's viewed as more secure. The work towards the meaningful is a lot harder and a lot more painful. And when I realized that, without and without doing any of the things that a healthy partner in a business team would do, which is get the opinion of the team, I decided from there and then just Uno reverse. We're not doing anything we've been building for the last 4 or 5 months, and we're now doing this. And because I can have a very intense personality, my team went with it, but that added another like a layer of chicken on on a already ginormous trauma sandwich, and all of that boiled up, and smooshed together and exploded and in late 20 in like really late 2022. I think November time, but my memory isn't that great when it comes to dates. And then actually no, this was around October. Sorry, this was around October. And then after that, I felt broken, like to my core broken, and it was a level of pain that cannot quite describe. And I had a decision. I had a decision to make at the time. Let myself get beaten by all of this, or just pick myself up and carry on. So I sought out support from different community leaders and those from different business communities and his like GB, like a Good Business Club, which sadly shutting down, but at the time they picked me, they helped me out massively, uh, civilly, and civilly my university mentors, mentors that I knew, long-time allies and long-time collaborators, mentors, mentors who I knew from for about 6 years now, as well, and with all of that support, I rebuilt myself, learned from discounted all of my previous experience running things because at that time I knew that it did not work, because while I made a lot of significant um, impact, both enterprises exploded. Exploded immensely. Instantly. Like if I like I decided to end them peacefully, fully, and just stepped away, that would have been one thing, but it wasn't. So I decided at that point I know nothing. Thing. I'm starting from scratch. Correct. And I approached it with what was very difficult for me at the time. The utmost humility in anyone who and any one of my community's mentors who agreed to work with me. I would absolutely learn from them and make use of their activities and over a period, and because I'm a practical learner, over the period of time that I was learning, and I'm still even learning now. It actually hasn't finished. It's just the work that led to the building of the sky of ever more successful, joyfully different. I had learned skills from community building, doing managing a team, mindset practices for me as an individual, and finance skills, marketing skills, how to do different types of social impact that are not just in government settings that I used to be in. I've had philosophical discussions on the nature of meaning, and I had funding at the time as well from worth about 8K a thousand, and which then I also invested in specialist coaching, and I wasn't going to make the mistake of ignoring the trauma sandwich, and so I got intense mental health mentoring from my university, and focused it really targeted, and at dealing with that, and then I was doing that support, having that mentoring as I was rolling out, uh, and which actually, as I was rolling out events, but it helped me find a vision that the best way to get, at least for me, the best way to to help people find that joy through that vision is through entrepreneurship, because of how diverse and different it is. It is that, and the various entities that mentored me helped me realize that is that not just because of what they taught me, but because of the very fact of who taught me in the first place. Hey,
It is
uh,
so important to have that support system around you. it doesn't matter, you take away from every experience. And when you finally can put it all together and build something more amazing than the first things, then that's what matters. So that
Absolutely.
speaks a lot about you and your resilience of, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to take the best parts of what I've already had and put those together to make something useful for myself and for another community. And
Absolutely.
be
Thank you so much for
example for
saying.
them. Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot, a lot. And all of that knowledge led me to be to know what kind of foundation I would want to have with my business partner, whose name is Alice Reeves, who is an experienced marketer, a new and emergent marketer of 7 years with a 15-year career in so many things. I can't remember the whole list. There was a corporate career, there is journalism, and some other things.
Wow. Yeah.
I've been told I'm everywhere, where by a lot of people she's a lot more everywhere. It's impressive. and um, and when Alice and I teamed up, we because of all that learnings and knowledge, we had after we agreed to team up together, we had a months long of discussions, putting all of our trauma on the table, everything we face, everything we might need support with, ironing out communication styles, ironing out visions for business, and what our personal careers we want to have as a kind of personal careers as well as a result of a business, individually as well as together, what we would want to have. And we discussed also all those sorts of topics and created a real foundation. And then we incorporated and scaled, and from which this was in May 2023, and from May until now, and now we scaled it, but we scaled it to what it is today. And the key thing though, even though that at that point I learned from my mistakes, I haven't actually stopped the learning I started, and I don't actually plan to either. There, at least anytime soon, probably never, because it's so interesting.
And it's
Interesting.
so important for people in general, but advocates to always be seeking and learning, and especially about the different things on different disabilities. That's a different category than just a normal person. you know and to understand that we're not a monolith, uh, is
Mm,
the first step. And a lot of people are not there.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, that's the story of my redemption in a way. Anyway, summed up version anyway. Even though that was a long monologue.
Thank you for sharing all that. It's important because that's a lot of people's story, I feel like, is in the disability community anyway, is
Mm,
they're always, thinking of a million things to start up something, but then there's just so many people that are either ableist or wanna, like we talked about, that don't recognize that there's different neurodivergent minds and we think differently and do things differently. And then if you have a physical disability and you live differently or you talk differently, and that's another nuance for them. And and
mm.
so they kind of shut us out. It's uncomfortable. So
Mm.
You for sure you'll be too.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be able to talk to you. Yeah. Um,
I don't think there's anything else. That was thanks a lot for sharing all that with
Yeah,
us, Mark.
yeah.
Maybe one more thing. What are the next steps for you in your business?
the next steps for me and my business I think it's two things. Expanding what we've already built, but maintaining it, earning it with funding and whatnot, or not. But I'm and not, and also exploring collaborations, conversations like this one, so on. With my in my many any reflection in my many conversations sessions with different founders and that help me learn and still do and do um, I've noticed that discussions on advocacy change making can sometimes really be in a vacuum,
Correct.
focusing on focusing on a focusing on just individual things at a time. And I'm starting to realize more and more more that does not work alone on its own. So an individual support is needed sometimes, a lot of the time, but that operation in a vacuum needs to change if we ever to get to a point.
Right.
Excuse me. If we ever to get to a point where we no longer have to do constant change making, and advocacy, advocacy. Let's see. A current one of the people who've mentored me, one of the leads inclusion inclusion leads in the UK, the head of diversity and ability at TEEF, once said to me that an intergenerational solution, sorry, an intergenerational problem requires an intergenerational solution. While that's and and I actually do agree with that. With that, uh, with that uh, uh, because we society society as a whole has evolved with means steeped in trauma, whether it's through whether it's protests, campaigns, campaigns, advocates going see us, we exist, and everything under the sun to do with that. Uh, that that without the infusion of actually conversations about the end goal, creating a society of that meets
Further,
everyone's needs.
yeah,
And
further,
the sorry,
yeah, further trauma of,
yeah,
not
we
agreeing, or that is definitely something that Mark and I saw last year coming into the advocacy space, that a lot of people we talked to were kind of, and this is very much um, evident of the past things that are going on in the disability community, where they were scared to become attached to something, or they were scared to look different or talk different or whatever. So they kind of stay to themselves, right? So now that you see people that are also neurodivergent in the advocacy space, they all kind of, I'm going to do my thing, and this is the business I have, and this is what I want to stick with, and you can't get in my space. That's what I've seen, and it's frustrating. So,
I
as a disability community, you don't want to bring that up and chastise people for, like you talked about, that whole resilience thing of starting your business. We don't want to bring people down for doing that. That's amazing. But at the same time, to collaborate and to come together on issues in the disability community, we're not going to get anywhere and have people ally with us if we don't get on the same page about things and stop yelling and complaining about things that are not, I mean, they're important, but they're not. The first thing we need to do is try to explain ableism and how not to be that.
I completely agree. Just and to follow on from that, and that to summarize my very long point, I think we're trying to solve trauma with further trauma. That's the state of what I think the advocacy programs and movements are in currently, and because of that, we have lost sight as society, I think, what the end goal really is, what we're actually building and doing all this work for, and without that end point of society that's still, and a key point that still has meaning, and still has meaning, but with everyone's needs met, we haven't discussed what that fully looks like. I am a big fan of Rick and Morty, as you can see from my wall and that giant red painting. and if anyone who can't read that, it says, "I want my Szechuan sauce. I don't care if it takes 9 seasons." Yes, and in season 6 episode called Jurassic World, dinosaurs, long thought instincts and dumb brutes make a comeback, a rather cosmic comeback to the Earth, where they have such advanced tech, it looks like they can do magic, and they take over the world by giving humanity the one thing everyone said they've always wanted. To be able to have free time and to do whatever they want. So the dinosaurs gave them that all the needs are met. It's everything's been fixed, and right in that immediate sort of utopia, humans got so restless and so lost, that the president of the US said to Eric, I can't look like this. It's nice. It's been nice watching YouTube videos, but after like the 15th Vine, and I can only take so much. Help me get rid of the dinosaurs so we can go back to pretending to fix the problems we cause. And while that was paid off at jokers in the show, I do think it has a very real message on the very nature of meaning within our society. Because a lot of people, from my perception in the nonprofit space, in the helping people work, derive their meaning from the work that they do. Meaning they derive them. If you really look at it, derive their meaning for plugging the holes in our society and stopping the boat from drowning. And I am really keen in exploring exploring a new form of exploring this topic, and what it looks and what that end goal, even if it is an ancient generation solution, generation looks like, is like, and do that work that creates a new system. Another founder I work with, a neurodivergent innovations coach, Matthew, once said to me, that systems exist to perpetuate themselves, to regenerate themselves. And if we do the work, if we change our approach to systems change work, that with that end goal of a joyful meaning, joyfully different meaning, haha puns, in the as the end goal, although it's intergeneration, it will be intergenerational, at least from my view. We create the work. We leave a substantial legacy behind for someone else to pick up that baton, and to continue further, then someone else, and then for someone to eventually take it to the finish line, where there's a happy, joyfully different, haha, second pun, system at the end of it, and I'm interested in doing that by exploring conversations with other leaders doing other things, other groups tackling other issues, and having that kind of systems change discussion, and continue that forward. And yeah, that's what would be next for the business, for me, my business, as well as getting the funds and the size to become the organization that provides good, joyful support to infuse joy into the businesses, for neurodivergent businesses.
That is so important, and we appreciate all the work you're doing and the people you're helping. What is a good way for people to contact you if they want?
Thank you so much. Our website site is a really good way to start. It's joyfullydifferent.co, which has all the information about us, and us. A lot of our most of our events are actually online, so anyone is welcome. But if people from abroad do join us, please factor in time differences and allow time for that important sleep. The website, we all you can also email us at hello.
Joyfully different.
It is joyfully different. Our website is joyfullydifferent.co. You can also email us at hello@joyfullydifferent.co. We also have a LinkedIn, where you can message us, joyfully different. And we also are really big on Instagram, at joyfully different UK. Okay, I wish I'm not forgetting any other social media platforms, but those are substantial enough for a shameless plug.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And hopefully our audience will as well.
Yep.
Thank you
for the great discussion, Mark.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an honor to be here.
I don't think you'll wait there. Is it?
It's 11 past 7. In the evening.
Okay, so not bad. Okay,
Not that late.
it's lunchtime here, so we're gonna go eat lunch.
Yeah.
Have some good food.
Okay, we will, and try to stay warm. Hopefully you
You
guys start working soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Have you as well. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching, guys, and don't forget to encourage, educate, and empower someone today.
Bye.